Lucas Moore hadn't expected to be ambushed by beauty when he walked through his best friend's new front door. But there she was, balanced perfectly on a step ladder, hanging what appeared to be a custom light fixture, her dark curls cascading down her back as she concentrated on the task at hand. "That's Zara Wilson," his friend Ryan whispered, following Lucas's gaze. "The genius behind everything you see. Best interior designer in the city, though I nearly had to sell a kidney to afford her." Lucas nodded absently, still watching as she descended the ladder with the graceful confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Her deep burgundy jumpsuit was both professional and striking against her warm brown skin, and when she turned and caught him staring, her smile was curious but unassuming. "You must be the fashionably late friend," she said, approaching them with an extended hand. "Ryan's been checking his watch every 30 seconds. "Lucas Moore," he replied, taking her hand and noting the firm grip, the slight roughness of her fingers that spoke of actual hands-on work. "I got caught in a conference call that wouldn't end. Hazards of the shipping industry." "He's being modest," Ryan interjected. "Lucas owns more maritime, those massive container ships that keep our economy afloat. Half of them have his name on them." Lucas shot Ryan an irritated glance. He'd spent his entire adult life working to be taken seriously for his business acumen rather than his net worth, which had recently crossed into 10-figure territory. "Impressive," Zara said, but Lucas was relieved to detect no shift in her demeanor. "But will your professional opinion on Ryan's new palace be as valuable as everyone else's? Because I'm collecting feedback." Her eyes sparkled with a challenge that made Lucas forget his usual careful reserve. "I've been known to have good taste," he replied with a smile. "We'll see about that," she countered, and before Lucas could respond, she was called away by another guest with a question about the kitchen backsplash. "She's single," Ryan said, nudging Lucas with his elbow. "And definitely not impressed by money, if that's what you're wondering. Turned down designing the governor's mansion because he was, and I quote, insufferably condescending." Lucas watched her across the room, animated as she explained something to an attentive group. "I wasn't wondering," he lied. The evening progressed, with Lucas finding himself increasingly drawn into conversations with Zara. She moved through the party with purpose. Ensuring every guest appreciated the thoughtful details, she'd incorporated the reclaimed wood coffee table that echoed Ryan's childhood home in Vermont, the subtle color scheme that transitioned through the house like seasons. "So what's your verdict?" she asked, appearing beside him as he examined a particularly interesting painting in the study. "That you're extraordinarily good at what you do," Lucas answered honestly. "This doesn't feel like a showpiece, it feels like Ryan." Something in her expression softened. "That's exactly what I aim for. Everyone deserves a space that feels authentically theirs." She gestured around them. "Even your skeptical eyes seem impressed." "Were my eyes skeptical?" "Thoroughly," she laughed. "From the moment you walked in, like you were counting the cost of everything." Lucas winced. "Professional hazard. I spend my days calculating efficiency and value." "And what's the value of feeling at home?" she asked, her question surprisingly direct. The question caught him off guard. His own penthouse apartment, while expensive and perfectly appointed by a designer whose name he couldn't currently recall, had never felt particularly like home. "I'm still calculating that," he admitted. Their conversation was interrupted by Ryan announcing dinner, but Lucas found himself seated across from Zara, continuing to be intrigued by her straightforward manner and obvious passion for her work. As the party began winding down, Lucas helped carry glasses to the kitchen where Zara was arranging flowers in a vase. "Need a hand?" he offered. "Sure, if billionaire shipping magnates know how to trim stems." He raised an eyebrow. "You've been researching me." "Ryan filled me in," she admitted. "Right after warning me that you're notoriously private and generally avoid social functions like this one. Yet here I am." "Yet here you are," she echoed, handing him a pair of scissors. "Cut at an angle about an inch from the bottom." They worked in comfortable silence for a moment before Lucas spoke again. "Would you consider taking on another client? My place could use a professional touch." Zara looked up, her expression thoughtful. "I'm actually booked solid for the next 8 months. "Oh," Lucas said, trying to hide his disappointment, "but I could come take a look. Just to consult," she added. "Sometimes people don't need a full redesign, just a few strategic changes." Lucas found himself smiling. "I'd appreciate that." Though fair warning, it's the stereotypical bachelor penthouse with zero personality. "Those are actually my favorite challenges," Zara replied. "Blank slates." They exchanged numbers, and Lucas left the party feeling lighter than he had in months. The next day, he found himself strangely nervous as he tidied his already immaculate penthouse before Zara's arrival. When she stepped into his home, her expression was carefully neutral as she took in the sleek, modern space with its monochromatic color scheme and minimal decoration. "It's very soulless," Lucas supplied. "I was going to say intentional," she countered, "but it doesn't seem to reflect much about you beyond success and tidiness." For the next hour, she moved through his space, asking questions about his routine, his preferences, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound notebook. Lucas found himself revealing more than he intended: his love of sailing, his collection of maps from places he'd visited, the fact that he often worked late into the night. "You know what's missing," she finally said, standing in his living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Evidence that someone actually lives here." "I travel a lot," he defended weakly. "So do I," she replied, "but home should be where you recharge, where you feel most yourself." She glanced around again. "This feels like a very nice hotel room." The accuracy of her assessment stung more than Lucas expected. "So what's the solution? Throw pillows and family photos?" Zara rolled her eyes. "I'm not going to infantilize you with design cliches. But I do think you deserve a space that feels like more than just a place to sleep between business trips." Before leaving, she surprised him by suggesting they meet at a salvage warehouse the following weekend. "I want to see what you're naturally drawn to when there are no price tags or brand names involved." Lucas agreed, intrigued by both the challenge and the opportunity to spend more time with her. The warehouse was a sprawling maze of architectural remnants, vintage furniture, and obscure objects that Zara navigated with the confidence of someone in their element. Lucas found himself genuinely enjoying the treasure hunt aspect, stopping to examine an old ship's compass that reminded him of the first vessel he'd ever purchased. "See, that reaction, that's what I'm looking for," Zara said, watching his face light up. "What does it remind you of?" Lucas told her about the rusty cargo ship he'd bought at 24, using every penny of his inheritance from his grandfather. How everyone had called him crazy for investing in such an old vessel, but he'd seen its potential. It had been the cornerstone of what was now a global shipping empire. "That story should be in your home," Zara said simply. "Not displayed like a trophy, but present in a way that reminds you of why you started." By the end of their excursion, they'd found several pieces that spoke to Lucas the compass. A weathered wood table that reminded him of his grandfather's workshop. A set of vintage blueprints that echoed his own meticulous planning nature. "This doesn't feel like work," Lucas commented as they had coffee afterward, surrounded by their purchases. Zara smiled. "The best design never does. It feels like discovering what was already there." Over the next few weeks, Lucas found himself looking forward to their meetings with an eagerness that surprised him. Zara approached his home like a puzzle to be solved, incorporating the salvage pieces with his existing furniture, adding elements that reflected his personality without ever becoming heavy-handed. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met, completely unimpressed by his wealth, unafraid to challenge his opinions, and possessed of a quiet confidence that he found increasingly attractive. One evening, as they sat on his balcony reviewing fabric samples, their conversation drifted from design to more personal territory. "How did you get into this line of work?" Lucas asked. Zara leaned back in her chair, the setting sun catching the amber highlights in her hair. "My mother was a housekeeper for wealthy families. I used to go with her sometimes during school breaks. I'd see these beautiful homes that felt completely unlived in, and it always made me sad." Lucas nodded, thinking of his own childhood in his parents' immaculate, emotionally sterile house. "When I was 12, one of her employers let me rearrange a bookshelf. Just a small thing, but the wife came home and cried because it reminded her of her grandmother's house." Zara smiled at the memory. "That was the first time I understood that spaces hold emotional power." "And your parents supported this career?" "My mother did. My father wanted me to pursue something more practical like law." She glanced at him. "What about you? Was shipping always the dream?" Lucas considered this. "No, but freedom was. My father worked for someone else his whole life and hated every minute of it. I wanted control over my own destiny." "And now that you have it," the question lingered between them. Lucas looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle below. "Now I'm learning there's more to life than control." Their eyes met, and Lucas felt something shift between them, a recognition that their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper. The transformation of his penthouse was nearly complete when Lucas invited Zara to dinner, not to discuss throw pillows or lighting fixtures, but simply to enjoy her company. She arrived wearing a simple emerald dress that made her eyes look almost golden, and Lucas realized with absolute clarity that he was falling in love with her. Dinner was relaxed, their conversation flowing easily from books to travel to their shared love of historical architecture. When they moved to the living room afterward, the space that had once felt so impersonal now enveloped them in warmth, filled with objects and colors that told his story. "You've worked magic here," Lucas said, gesturing around them. "It actually feels like home now." "You did the hard part," Zara replied, "being honest about who you are and what matters to you." Their eyes met, and Lucas felt his heart quicken. "I've been wanting to ask you something," he began, uncharacteristically nervous. "Would you consider having dinner with me again?" "Not as my designer, but as—" "Yes," Zara interrupted with a smile. "I'd like that." Their first official date took them to a small coastal town where they spent the day exploring antique shops and ended with dinner at a dockside restaurant. Lucas found himself sharing stories he'd never told anyone about the loneliness of his childhood, his fears about becoming like his emotionally distant father, the pressure of maintaining a business empire. Zara listened with genuine interest, offering insights without judgment. In turn, she told him about her struggles to be taken seriously in a field dominated by established names with prestigious design degrees, about caring for her mother through a long illness, about her dream of someday starting a program to help low-income families create healing spaces regardless of budget. "Most people don't understand that your environment affects everything: your mood, your health, your relationships," she explained passionately. "It's not about luxury, it's about intentionality." "You've certainly changed my environment," Lucas said, "and quite a few other things as well." When he kissed her goodnight at her door, it felt like the most natural progression in the world. Their relationship deepened over the following months. Lucas found himself prioritizing time with Zara over business meetings for the first time in his career. She challenged him to see beyond profit margins to the human impact of his decisions, while he supported her vision to expand her design practice to include community projects. "You know, when Ryan first introduced us, I thought you were just another rich guy looking for a status symbol home," Zara admitted one evening as they cooked dinner together in his kitchen, an activity Lucas had never engaged in before meeting her. "And what do you think now?" he asked, pretending to be offended. "That you were a rich guy with excellent taste who just needed someone to help you express it," she teased, stealing a kiss as she passed him to check on the roasting vegetables. Not everything was smooth sailing. Lucas's intense work schedule and Zara's independent nature sometimes created friction. Their first serious argument erupted when Lucas, accustomed to solving problems with money, offered to finance her community design program without discussing the details with her first. "I don't need you to swoop in and fix everything," she said, her voice tight with anger. "This is my dream, my vision. I need a partner, not a patron." The words stung, but they also forced Lucas to examine his approach to relationships. He'd always used his wealth as a buffer, keeping emotional entanglements at arm's length. With Zara, that wasn't possible or desirable. "You're right," he conceded after they'd both cooled down. "I'm still learning how to be part of a team. But I want to learn if you're willing to be patient with me." Their reconciliation deepened their connection, and Lucas found himself thinking more seriously about their future together. 6 months into their relationship, he took Zara sailing on a small yacht, not one of his massive container ships, but a sleek vessel he'd recently purchased with their weekend excursions in mind. "I have something to show you," he said, reaching into his pocket as they anchored in a secluded cove. But instead of a ring box, which Zara had momentarily feared, he pulled out a folded document. "I've been working on a new project." The papers outlined his plans to convert one of his company's older warehouses into affordable living spaces for artists and craftspeople, with a community design center where Zara's program could be housed. "This isn't me trying to take over," he clarified quickly. "It's me believing in your vision and wanting to be part of it, if you want." Tears filled Zara's eyes as she read through the carefully considered plans. "This is exactly what I've been dreaming of." "There's more," Lucas said, taking a deep breath. "I've been thinking about scaling back my direct involvement in the shipping operations, promoting my COO to take over daily management." Zara looked up in surprise. "But you love your work." "I do," he agreed. "But I've realized there are other things I love more. Like having time to build a life with someone, like seeing more of the world than just its shipping routes." He took her hand. "Like being with you." "Lucas Moore, are you proposing some kind of life upheaval here?" Zara asked, her voice teasing but her eyes serious. "I'm proposing a partnership," he replied. "In all things, if you're interested." Her answer came in the form of a kiss that left no doubt about her interest. They spent the next year bringing their shared vision to life. The warehouse transformation became a labor of love, with Lucas applying his business acumen to navigate regulations and budgets, while Zara created spaces that fostered creativity and community. Along the way, Lucas discovered talents he never knew he possessed: an eye for potential in discarded materials, a genuine enjoyment of hands-on work that connected him to his grandfather's legacy. Zara found that her design philosophy expanded as she considered the broader implications of urban development and sustainable practices. "We make a good team," Lucas observed one evening as they sat on the rooftop garden of the now completed community center, watching as artists and residents mingled below them. "We do," Zara agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "Though I still can't believe Ryan's housewarming party led to all this. I should send him a very expensive thank you gift," Lucas mused. "Perhaps a small island," Zara laughed, "or just design his next home for free." Lucas took her hand, suddenly serious. "I have another project I'd like your opinion on." He led her to a door she hadn't noticed before, unlocking it to reveal a small apartment tucked under the rooftop eaves. Unlike the other spaces in the building, this one was fully furnished, a perfect blend of both their styles, with large windows overlooking the city and the harbor beyond. "What is this?" Zara asked, walking slowly through the space that somehow felt intimately familiar despite her never having seen it before. "It could be our place," Lucas said quietly. "Not all the time we can keep the penthouse for when we need to be downtown. But I thought we might want somewhere that's truly ours, that we built together." Zara turned to him, her eyes wide. "You want to live here?" "In the community center, I want to live wherever you are," he replied simply. "And this place matters to both of us." He reached into his pocket, and this time did produce a small box. "Which brings me to my actual question." The ring inside was unique, a deep blue sapphire surrounded not by diamonds but by tiny pieces of sea glass they'd collected on their coastal excursions. Zara Wilson, you've redesigned my life in ways I never imagined possible. Will you marry me and continue making every space we share feel like home? Her yes echoed through the apartment that would indeed become their favorite refuge over the years to come. They married the following spring in the courtyard of the community center, surrounded by friends, family, and the residents who had become part of their extended community. Ryan, serving as best man, couldn't resist mentioning in his toast how he'd predicted their relationship from the moment Lucas had stared at Zara on that ladder. As successful as both their professional ventures continued to be, Lucas's shipping company expanding into environmental shipping solutions, while Zara's design practice gained international recognition for its community-focused approach, it was their personal partnership that brought them the deepest satisfaction. 5 years after that fateful housewarming party, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl who grew up with both the security of Lucas's resources and the creative spirit of Zara's influence. Their home, now a renovated lighthouse on the coast that they had lovingly restored together, was filled with evidence of a life fully lived, treasures from their travels, art from community center residents, and most importantly, the laughter and occasional chaos of a family that had found its perfect design. Did you ever imagine this would be your life? Zara asked Lucas one evening as they watched the sun set over the ocean, their children playing on the beach below. Lucas pulled her close, thinking of that first meeting and how unprepared he'd been for the ways she would transform not just his living space but his heart. Never, he admitted, but now I can't imagine it any other way. And as the lighthouse lamp automatically illuminated above them, casting its warm glow over their family and the home they'd created together, Lucas Moore, once defined solely by his wealth and work, knew that the true value of life couldn't be calculated in dollars, but in moments just like this one.